Let's start at the beginning. The word Seax, Suax, or Sax, or Seax comes from Proto-Germanic, something like sahså or sahså, depending on the reconstruction. And all it meant was a knife, a blade that sometimes cuts and was sometimes used as a weapon. It wasn't originally the iconic Anglo-Saxon weapon that we know today. It was the idea of an edge. But words travel. They move with people, with tribes, with warriors, and as they travelled, they changed, not just in meaning, but in sound. Now, when we talk about Anglo-Saxon England, we're not talking about one unified language. We're talking about a patchwork of voices, different kingdoms, different peoples, different identities, and different ways of speaking. Take, for instance, Northumbria in the north of England. Their speech was often a bit harsher, a bit more clipped. So Sax might come out short, sharp, almost like the strike of the blade itself. Sax. Move down to Mercia, central England, a place where I am from, a melting pot of history. Here you might still hear Sax, and in the early period of the 7th century and the 6th they would say something like Seax, but sometimes softened slightly, depending on influence and contact. Mercia sits in the middle and it sounds like it. Now we move down south into Wessex, the West Saxon dialect. This is where we get a lot of our written Old English from. Here you're more likely to hear Seax or Seax, a slightly longer vowel, a bit more drawn out. This is the version many people lean towards today, because it's the one that survived in writing. Head east into East Anglia. Now you're in a region shaped by trade, by contact, by the sea. Here the pronunciation could shift again. Still recognisable, but perhaps slightly lighter. Sax or Sax, depending on the local influence. We now move down into Kent, closer to the continent, closer to the older Germanic roots. You might hear something like a little closer to Seax or Seax. The A sounds like cat, but sometimes pronounced with a slight E, a more open vowel. And if you push further west towards Cornwall, you're entering a Celtic speaking world, and I find that fascinating. Old English isn't dominated here in the same way, so the word itself might not even be native in Cornwall, and if used it would likely be shaped by entirely different linguistics instincts. But this doesn't stop at England, because the people we call Anglo-Saxons came from somewhere across the sea. In Frisia, among the Continental Saxons, you'd hear something closer to Sax. Very tight, very direct. Sax. No stretching, just the blade in sound form. In Saxony itself, in what is now Germany, again, Seax is pronounced Sax, firm and grounded, almost unchanged from its older roots. Now bring in the Norse world, the Viking Age. We have the countries of Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Iceland. In Denmark you might hear something like Sax or Sax, depending on the dialect and the period of history. In the north we go across the sea to Norway and Sweden. Old Norse influences shift things slightly, but the core sound remains familiar. Sax. Clean. Functional. Practical. We again move across the sea to Iceland, the land of ice and fire, where language preserves older forms remarkably well. You'd likely still to hear something very close to Sax, a sound that echoes deep into its past. And this is the point. There wasn't one way, there wasn't one pronunciation, there wasn't one correct way. There were many, each shaped by land, by tribe, by the people, by contact, by identity. Back then, in history, The way you spoke told people where you were from. Before you even lifted a weapon, your voice had already spoken. You could walk into a great hall, say the words Seax, Seax, Seax or Sax, and someone across the room would know what you meant. You're not one of us, because you pronounce it different to us. So today we want certainty. We want one answer, one way of saying it, one pronunciation we can point to and say, that's right, and everything else is wrong. But history doesn't work like that. Language doesn't work like that. So next time you say Seax, Seax, Seax or Sax, just remember, you're not just saying a word, you're echoing a voice from the past, from a specific place, from a specific tribe, from a specific time. And that is remarkable. And maybe the real truth is this: there isn't one correct way to say it, because there never was. So now I'm curious, how do you say the word Seax, Sax or Seax? Drop your pronunciation in the comments. I want to see where everyone lands on this. And if you enjoy uncovering the real voices behind history, subscribe and join me, because there's a lot more we've been saying wrong. And the reason why I've chosen to make this video, because I'll often get comments when I say the word Seax or Seax or Sax instead of saying Sax, and people will say, you're pronouncing that wrong. Well, there isn't a right and a wrong way of saying that word, but the most important thing is that we learn from history, and if we learn from history, we can make the world a better place. So until we meet again on the channel, it is goodbye from me, and I hope you found this video to be interesting and it's put it to bed over the way we say this word. And I love a good Seax or Sax, depending on how you pronounce it. Whoa, yeah!